Top 5 reasons the ACC needs to worry. Now, look, they're locked into a long grant of rights. So that's going to protect them in a lot of this. And the cost of the legal part of this will also slow things down. But this is why they've got to start looking ahead. And before we get into the top 5, here's one of the graphics that Michael Alford showed at the Board of Trustees today. In that, so this is one of several, I hope. It wasn't just this one. But FSU, this is their viewership compared to the rest of the ACC. And you see there's only one school that's on par with them, and then 3 others that are, or I mean really just 2 in Miami and Louisville who could kind of maybe jump up into that territory. But, you know, it's 2 schools dominating the television rankings.
If that was the Big 12 and you didn't have the logos at the bottom, wouldn't that be the same thing? Or would it be maybe 1 or 2 others a little higher?
It's very similar.
Yeah, you wonder. Okay, all right.
So, but, you know, the ACC, I mean, they've got a long-term thing, like I said before. But they have to navigate this well. So, but here's why they have to worry. Number 5, adding teams did not help them the last time they did it. Adding Pitt and Syracuse didn't really help them at all. It's not really changed anything for them. It's not helped their ratings. It's not helped any of that. It's just kind of kept them. It kind of kept them in place for the time in 2012, but now here in 2023, it's just not really giving them any juice. And like we said before, there's not people you can just go out and add that are going to make that better for you. Like the Big 12 had to do it to save themselves, and they probably got the 4 teams that had current value. The ACC, really, I mean, there's not many people they can add that's going to make that better. And the one that they would, because they're in every other sports, Notre Dame, is just not going to happen. Yeah. So didn't help them last time. So right now it's not going to help you this time.
Yeah, I mean, the only thing that makes sense as far as adding teams would be an alliance of some sort. Outside of that, you know, what are they going to go grab the Pac-12 schools too? Are they going to do that as well? Are they going to go grab the Big 12? I don't see really what strength they have to be able to do that, and why others would just say, okay, yeah, we'll just go fold into you. I mean, there's not enough of a difference to feel like they're the superior, you know, power in play here. So yeah, I mean, there's nobody to go and get really that makes any difference for them. They've got a pretty stocked cupboard at the moment, and it is what it is. So yeah, I mean, that would only happen. Adding teams, quote unquote, would be an alliance where you're not technically adding them full on, outside of Notre Dame, of course. But you know, that's the one that, you know, is always in play for everybody's imagination, but never seemed to really be in play in reality. Yeah.
Yes, the ACC, thank you, Gregory, did add Louisville since then, and that might have been a little bit of a bump, and that's obviously one of the teams that does well. But, you know, who's the other Louisville out there? You know, like, who's that? Like, I don't know. And, again, Louisville's just been kind of good for them. And in my opinion, look, James Crepea disagreed with me, but there are 2 ACCs, in my opinion. There's the FSU, Clemson, North Carolina. Maybe Louisville needs to be in that other side based on their viewership, and their basketball and football is both pretty good. But there is the BC, Wake Forest, Georgia Tech, you know, that is, I don't want to give them in the like, oh, we're just happy to be here, but they know they're in a great situation. And they are, I mean,
where's Virginia? You couldn't put all logos.
Yeah.
Okay.
Virginia, I would think, would be on the left side here with the power, the big 3 right there, just because of their educational clout alone.
That'd be the only reason. Yeah, I mean, basketball, but apparently that doesn't matter. So I guess it depends on who you talk to, if it matters or not. Then Virginia's in there.
It's a big school. And it's a really big school.
You made the comment, just happy to be here. But really, no one ever would have that mentality.
No, it's not that. Like, that would be what it's probably like, the crass way of saying it. But understanding that your situation is very much buoyed.
Know your role?
No, but also, look, in the Big 12, if last week, you know, Baylor and TCU, Kansas State had been like, hey, we're the most recent Big 12 champions. Before this media deal gets done, can we get a little bit more money? Everybody else would have been like, no, that's not what we agreed to.
Yeah.
But when FSU and Clemson brought it up at the ACC meetings a couple weeks ago, they weren't shouted out of the room. Yeah. It was taken in. So
yeah, I don't think that's an exact comparison though, because they're bigger. They're much bigger brands. Like the Big 12. I mean, now it's, you know, built on the Baylors and the TCUs to an extent, but they couldn't carry it by themselves. But like these are the headliners we're talking. Like that's not the equivalent of Baylor and TCU saying. That's the equivalent of Oklahoma and Texas before they left.
Well,
saying
okay,
that.
then the better thing would be Oklahoma and Texas decided they wanted to go back to the old ways, and they knew that wasn't going to happen in the Big 12 anymore. So
they wanted a revenue share, and the Big 12 said no or said yes or whatever. But and I'm not saying this as like a knock on you, Paul, but this is very much the air of superiority that every conference is dealing with right now. Yeah. This is USC and UCLA saying we're too good for the Pac-12. This is Oklahoma and Texas, we're too good for the Big 12. This is probably what's going to happen with the ACC because they're the only ones still left standing. The Big Ten and the SEC's giants are all satisfied, fat, and hungry right now. So this is the only conference that's in play that has not had their best teams, like money-wise, success-wise, what have you, their blue bloods. They're the only one that has not had those leave yet. So, yeah, that's what it's equivalent to.
You wonder if there would have been a vote in the Big 12 if Texas and OU, before the SEC thing hit, had they gone to the Big 12, whoever, and said, hey, we'll stay, but we want to go back to the old ways. Even knowing that there could be an issue with survival, I think everybody would have said goodbye.
Yeah, I mean, because
it depends on a percentage.
Yeah.
Like how much of a difference in revenue sharing. We've seen where that doesn't work or it creates a problem, even if it works for those who are the ones who bring in more of the cash cow.
And look, and the ACC has gotten along a whole lot better than most conferences do, really. I mean, like, there's not, Michael Alford saying this is just stating, like, a mathematical fact that they're $30 million behind. So the best time for them to actually do this, because, look, Florida State and Clemson put themselves in this spot. They could have figured out a different way back in 2012 when the SEC was still open for business, but I do think Florida State did not want to be in the conference with Florida at the time. I think they were still under kind of that, Bobby Bowden way of thinking of we can win the ACC, and they're right. The next year they dominated through it and won the national title. So at the time it was a great decision for them. Down the line, it's now maybe not been great. Number 3, not many teams bring it up and then stay in the conference. So like when you bring up, hey, we're not making enough money here, that doesn't usually end with we're going to stick around. That means you have
like one foot out the door.
Yeah, I mean, like, so
or mentally.
The fact that it's been brought up, and look, it could be a decade from now when this happens, but the fact is it's been floated now. It's been out there. And all the other speculation that's really ever happened before has mostly been about from the outside, not necessarily from the inside of one of those schools saying it just blatantly like, I mean, it's not good enough. But when you got the AD of one of your big dogs saying there's a $30 million gap between us and the rest, that's the first salvo of things are going to change.
Of everything that was reported today, from Miami and the NIL and the NCAA to even Ion, yes or no, that one there was the one that got everybody's, not just attention, all of them did. That's the one that most people are talking about throughout the rest of the day, was the Florida State comments from the AD.
Yeah. Number 2, if FSU's bringing it up, Clemson and UNC aren't far behind when it comes to the revenue sharing. Those things are going to come out in their meetings as well. So this is going to create a situation where, these 3 schools and probably a couple others are going to start saying like, well, what do we do? How do we close that gap? And if you've got more than one talking about it, then it's really going to start rolling. And then you figure out, okay, how do you change the grant of rights? Is that even possible? Is it worth the money to change the grant of rights? And then the endless line of questions that come with that after that.
I was surprised to see North Carolina's TV ratings really aren't that impressive. If you pull up that other graphic, they were like next to last, basically. Like, okay, third from last. I mean, they're behind NC State by just a smidgen, behind Pitt, behind Virginia, Georgia Tech.
Behind Syracuse.
I mean, those are all – I can see the markets, though. Somebody will know markets they're in. But, I mean, that's just found that interesting because I suppose that they would be higher up there. But I guess their appeal is, wait, basketball doesn't matter. Keep hearing that. Oh, wait, no, that's definitely matters here. And, I mean, I get they're a large school, lots of history and all that. But I was surprised they were kind of in the back given – I don't know. It feels like they're coming off of a year where they were talked about quite a bit, but I'm sure with Drake May next season, that'll be a real tell as far as their TV poll because they should be involved in a lot of storylines, at least early on.
Yeah. And number 1, even unequal revenue sharing is not going to make up $30 million. I said this a couple times during the show. So if you take, say, 4 schools you have to give unequal revenue sharing to, That's what it comes down to, 4 of them. So to make up $30 million, you'd be asking 4 other schools essentially every year. And it wouldn't be that way, but that would be the equivalent of, all right, would you please give us,
What do they get in a year right now?
They're in the 30 somewhere. They're 22, but like, and they'll pay out like.
Let's say it's 30.
Let's say it's 30.
And by the way, don't hammer us because it may be 37 or 22.
But
let's say it's 30. So 30 for Florida State, for 4 schools to make up $30 million, you're looking at that's $120 million a year.
Yeah,
right?
so you're already that's half.
The
The
ACC is basically making the same as the Big 12.
Yeah.
They're making like
So
$31 million.
There you go.
Yeah,
so you're talking about Georgia Tech and all the others would have to take $15 million.
36 as of 2021, according to tax returns. That's the latest I can find.
So you're getting 15 to others, and the other guys would be getting 40. 42, 40, that's not.
Yeah, it's not going to fly, and so to make up that gap. So then the question becomes, well, at least for the time being, how much of the gap between $0 and $30 million do you have to cover?
Well, it's not even the 1 year, though, Paul. It's how about after 4 years, you have $120 million that you are behind.
Yeah.
After 10 years, $300 million over a decade. So, I mean, even if you just look at it from a year standpoint, it's like, damn, $30 million is a lot of money, but 2 years, that's $60 million. Less than 4 years in, you're talking about over $100 million lost compared to your peers. So, that adds up very quickly.
Yeah. So what's the number in the middle? While the grant of rights is, while they're not going to leave and they're not just going to bolt because they're not in a situation like USC and UCLA. So when they're not going to do that, so how can you make them happier until you can renegotiate?
So maybe they get they have to make up, each school gets an extra 10 a year. And then you might have something manageable.
But then that's 20, then 5 years, it's still $100 million.
I agree.
So then
how much till the other schools start complaining of like, now how much are we losing?
Yeah.
Like now we're losing all this money? Like we can't.
And they don't have any more of a solid footing because they realize what's next. By the way, one other quick story about sports media.